Technology under threat from dinosaurs. Defending the peace. IBS World News.
When I first loaded up Exoprimal, I was excited. I had high hopes. The tutorial and overall presentation of the first few minutes of the game was very well done. It made me want to play more. Overwatch mixed with dinosaurs, PvPvE, sign me up. After spending a bit more time on Bikatoa Island, I came to the realization that Exoprimal just doesn't have very much to offer. It's uninspiring and about as prehistoric as the dinosaurs that you're fighting. Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. Today we're diving into the Jurassic world of Exoprimal. Here's what the developers have to say about it. Exoprimal is an online team-based action game that pits humanity's cutting-edge exosuit technology against history's most ferocious beasts, dinosaurs. Upon starting the game, I had a few frustrations. To even play the damn game, I needed to create and link a Capcom account to my Microsoft account. I'm playing on Game Pass and I'm glad sure I did, because I only spent about £1 to play this game, and even that felt like a steep ask after I was done with it. Not to mention the optional DLC bits that you can buy, but I'll get to that later. After what felt like an eternity trying to even set the game up, I was finally able to log in. I was bombarded by an endless parade of cutscenes, half of which didn't make any sense at all. When I was recording footage for this review, I spent 45 minutes just logging in, creating accounts, doing tutorials and watching cutscenes. It was about an hour before I managed to get into a proper match, and I'm not even joking. It felt like the game was deliberately trying to pad out the beginning and place cutscenes in a way specifically just to waste my time and prevent me from refunding it. Joke's on you, Capcom, because I didn't even buy this piece of crap and I'm glad I didn't. Even with the half an hour of cutscenes, I still had no idea what was going on. The game quickly introduces the story, which basically involves a dinosaur outbreak which happened 3 years ago, and a bunch of velociraptors were catapulted out of a big purple portal and wreaked havoc on the world. Now, 3 years later, a manic AI decides to transport people back in time to this same event to pit groups of soldiers against hordes of these purple portal dinosaurs, Squid Game style. Yep, I've got no idea either. I had to look this up on Google just to make sure I had it right. So let's discuss the gameplay, or lack thereof. Exoprimal features a single game mode called War Game, which pits 10 players against each other in 2 teams. On paper, this sounds fantastic, like Overwatch combined with Dinocrisis and Left 4 Dead. There's 3 different classes to pick from and a number of different suits for each class with their own abilities, strengths and weaknesses. Sounds awesome, right? No. The execution of this game falls flat on its face and fails to deliver any of the excitement that it promises. The gameplay is repetitive and lackluster, and the visuals would be incredible if this was 10 years ago. So you select the game mode, the only game mode, and you suffer a particularly long load time to load into the lobby where you sit for a few seconds before the match begins. The problem is that you have to do this every single time. I timed it just to see how long this would take, and clicking the matchmaking button, it took me 2 minutes and 32 seconds to get into a game. Pretty much every single time. Now I know 2 minutes isn't that long to sit there, but when you have to listen to the narrator say the same voice lines at the start of every match, it gets tedious pretty quickly. It's like that infamous Metal Gear Solid 5 helicopter section, but without the option to skip it. Thankfully someone released a mod to get rid of that in the PC version years ago.
I require all exofighters to participate in the combat tests.
If I've got to hear that damn voice line one more time, I'm going to require Capcom developers for a live test of my own. On the bright side, you can use this lobby time to strategize with your team if you're playing in voice chat or with friends, although I imagine most players already know what they want to play before queuing up, so most of the time people just sit there, motionless. A lot of people are probably playing with the matchmaking feature and not actually playing with friends at all like me. Selecting your suit and your class is also a hassle because as far as I know there isn't actually any way to see your different suit abilities while on the menu screen, so you'll need to be in a match and press F1 to actually decide what your abilities do. The problem is that matches are short and there's barely any time to change suits, so again I had to bring up Google and learn the abilities before I went into a game. I'll give the game some credit here. It is refreshing to be able to change your suit during the match to adapt to the needs of your team, but in the time I played there wasn't that much strategy to be had anyway, and by the time you end up changing your suit, getting out of the other one, getting in the new one, everyone's already gone. Speaking of strategy, a lack of understanding seems to be a theme carrying over into the gameplay itself too. The game isn't particularly complicated, but there is just so much happening on the screen that it's impossible to see what's going on half the time. There's a lack of feedback and weight to the gameplay, so sometimes I wasn't even sure if I was firing my weapon, so I just spam clicked until there were no more dinosaurs to kill. Exoprimal's gameplay essentially just revolves around a DPS race between 2 groups of 5 pitted against each other to get through waves of enemies to reach the end mission. The first to reach the end mission wins. You go through area to area in very samey maps, mashing buttons, killing dinosaurs, rinse and repeat. With each match lasting barely 10 minutes, the lack of variety becomes immediately apparent. I've heard that the game does open up a bit further down the line when you've leveled up and unlocked more of the story, but this just boils down to more dinosaur varieties and end mission types. The premise from what I gather is that each team should have at least 1 tank, at least 1 support and the rest damage dealers, but I didn't ever find having a tank was useful as they're just slower and do less damage. The tank suits themselves are a lot of fun and allow you to set up barriers for your team with the Krieger suit or throw up a shield, Reinhardt style with the roadblock suit. My favourite was probably Krieger and his awesome minigun and rocket shoulders. The Assault class, your primary damage dealer, you've got Deadeye who uses automatic weapons and rifle grenades, Zephyr uses a sword and has an upward thrust and sword dash ability, and the Barrage suit which uses explosive weaponry to kill things. These characters are unique and offer a range of different gameplay styles and feel good to control and play, but even this gets pretty old quickly. A lot of the abilities that characters have, particularly the rocket launcher which all characters can use, takes ages to wind up, and by the time you're ready to fire it, all the enemies are dead anyway. The support class was useful and the most fun I had in Exoprimal. I'm usually a support player by default anyway, but there isn't any in-game indication as to who or where your tank is, and half the time, the tank isn't the main player taking the majority of the damage because a lot of enemies come from different directions at once, and the tank is too slow to be everywhere. When healing teammates, you imbue them with a green Overwatch style overheal which degrades over time, giving your teammates effectively double health. But my god, the healing abilities are horrendous. The fact that you have to aim towards teammates without any lock-on or in-game feedback showing that you've targeted them is just another practice in button mashing. Take the Witch Doctor for example. The fact that you have to aim towards an ally is fine, but the range is tiny and you'll constantly be chasing your teammate to try and heal them, and ally hitboxes are so tiny that you'll end up missing about 80% of your shots while you watch them slowly die. When playing as the Skywave suit, this became a little easier because of the splash heal effect and being able to fire at them from above, but even this was difficult. Seriously, this is a clip of me trying to heal my very best. It's also pretty annoying to have to move away from the objective to put down an area heal or get close enough to use your abilities, and the game moves so quickly, but by the time you get there and plonk it down, the fight's already over and your tank is dying at the next objective. There's no specific healing nuances here, no heal over time, no damage effects, no strategy. Speaking of lack of gameplay, there isn't any difficulty levels, no major gameplay changes, no ranked mode. Exoprimal just feels devoid of any strategy or interesting gameplay. The wargame matches are just so snowbally. Have you ever played a game and you know you're gonna lose and you have absolutely no hope of winning no matter what you do? Well, that's the entire premise of Exoprimal. If the enemy gets too far in front of you, then you're just fucked. By the time you even finish the last kill everything mission, the enemy is like a quarter of the way through the end mission, and you've got no hope of catching up. If your team is bad or the enemy team has a superstar just murdering everything, the game snowballs out of control because there's no catch-up mechanics. Even in a PvPvE game, the PvP exists, but only in the last few minutes with nothing in between, so you won't even see your opponents until the game's over. So you make your way through a small variety of maps killing waves of samey dinosaurs until you reach the final end mission. This is where things are different and randomized end missions change up the gameplay slightly. There are objectives here depending on whether or not you opted for a PvP or PvP match, and have you escorting payloads, killing specific dinosaurs, or playing capture the flag style events against the enemy team. The PvP in Exoprimal is horrendous. It's just bad. It's just a button mashing fiesta and the team shooting more bullets at the other team wins. There's no outplay or strategy, it's just a win or a lose. Even when it's a close match and both teams are at the last objective together, you have to pick between standing there on the payload to move it away or move from the payload to fight the enemy team. So when you leave the payload to disrupt the enemy and half your team is still standing on the payload to move it, which isn't the wrong choice to make, you end up just getting wrecked in a 5v1. And to be honest, this just sums up the whole game. Usually within the first minute of a match, you'll know if your team is going to lose, and there's very little variation or strategy between. I played this game for about 10 hours and I'm already completely sick of it. The dinosaurs themselves are pretty lackluster. They don't do anything unique or interesting. In total, there's about 7 different dinosaurs and some higher level variants, but overall, these are just nice looking bullet sponges. They do have different crit locations on their bodies, so there is a tiny bit of strategy here, but that's about it. Halfway through the final mission, you're offered the ability to turn into a giant T-Rex to disrupt the enemy team, which sounds awesome. However, when you activate this ability, you're faced with another stupid loading screen which takes like 10 seconds, and then you're thrown into the enemy team and it feels like you're wasting time. The dinosaurs control like a bumper car in an ice rink, and you end up just flailing around trying to kill whoever is unfortunate enough to be near you. Fighting against an enemy controlled dinosaur isn't that much more fun either, as they're just giant bullet sponges that periodically disintegrate one of your team members, and there's no strategy on either side. It feels bad if you're playing as a dinosaur, it feels bad if you're playing against a dinosaur. So outside of the game, as I mentioned, there are a couple of modern and stylish progression systems as one would expect from a AAA game, jam-packed with battle passes, premium passes, cosmetics out the arse, premium skins, decals, weapon charms, sprays, character unlocks, and a bunch of other garbage. It reminds me a lot of what Blizzard did to Overwatch 2. The progression systems look very similar, and even the menu and the UI looks similar to Overwatch. It's pretty clear that this is a good old money grab from Capcom, and I wouldn't recommend putting a single penny into this game. Like I said, I spent £1 on a trial of Game Pass for this, and that's more than enough for me. There is an in-game currency called Bitcoins, which you can use to unlock and upgrade suit perks and modules and purchase new cosmetics in-game. These coins are earned through completing matches in the wargame mode. In terms of progression, the story is told in a unique way through the analysis map, which slowly unlocks as you play more games and level up. This is a Path of Exile style progression tree which looks pretty fancy, but really it's just a lazy way of telling the game's story through cutscenes and voice lines, and you've got no control over it whatsoever. In terms of graphics, the game doesn't look that bad. I played it on medium settings for the 2080 and an i7 and it ran at 60 FPS. I cranked that up to ultra and the game almost had a stroke, but to be fair I'll blame that one on my slightly older graphics card. Overall the game ran smoothly on medium settings and I had no problem, but my god, it looks like a PS3 game. It's got that weird arcade style feel to it, and objects and corpses just disintegrate into thin air. Exoprimal is definitely about 10 years too late. The sound design is fine, nothing to write home about, and the soundtrack is there, but I was never hooked by it. The voice acting is not bad. I think the story does have some interesting points to it, and it could definitely make for a decent game, but even that's just wrapped around some of the worst gameplay and systems I've played in a while. It's definitely not worth it for the story alone. So finally, after digesting that load of dinosaur shit, we have the price. The game costs about £50 for the standard edition on Steam, and £55 for the deluxe. That's $60. The game also offers a multitude of cosmetic options to purchase already. The game has only been out for less than a week, and I calculated that you can buy about £50 worth of cosmetic DLC if you're so inclined, although I have no idea why you would be. If you buy the Overdrive kit, you can get all of the released cosmetics up to this point for about £30. That's on top of the main game. The kicker here being that this offers cosmetics that aren't even in the game up to writing this, meaning that this might be the first game I've ever seen to actually have pre-order cosmetics for a game that's already out. The pricing structure is the classic games as a service deal, and for a sweet 70 quid you can buy everything that's out so far. For a game of this quality and length, that's absolutely disgusting. This isn't even mentioning the unlockable characters, which I'm pretty sure Capcom have more planned for release in the future, which will cost even more money, and a multitude of weapon charms, skins, stickers, decals, all that fun stuff. The game's an absolute steal, and by that I mean it's literally just designed to steal your money. Overall, this is probably one of the worst games I've seen in a while, which isn't saying much because I tend to avoid AAA games these days because of this exact reason. I got about 5 hours out of it before I started getting worried, and 10 hours before I was ready to throw in the towel. Do not buy this game. I couldn't even call it an unfinished mess because it is clearly finished, and I'll be surprised if this game ever gets good. Oddly enough, this game is mostly positive on Steam at the moment, but Metacritic definitely puts this game in place with justifiably low scores. There are some flashes of potential here. The story is interesting but told in a boring way. The gameplay can be fun but it lacks strategy and variety. The game barely has any content past the 12 hours of cutscenes the game forced me through before playing its single game mode. Exoprimal is a mediocre attempt at a dinosaur horde shooter that could have been amazing, overshadowed by its many flaws and lack of substance. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please hit that like button, leave a comment or subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and as always, happy dinosaur hunting.